What's up, everybody? Well, guess what? Today we're going to talk a little 2020 action. First tournament of the year. It's the first 2020 of the year. That's right. First 2020 of 2022. We're talking St. John's River, very first tournament of the year. We just got back. Matter of fact, the boat's still full of stuff. We just got back from that 2-week back-to-back event. Harris Chain went really well, so cannot wait for you guys to see those videos. There's some big fish caught, and we had big cameras rolling on all the fish catches and even some fish misses. So that series is going to be, I'm going to tell you right now, that one is going to be an awesome series. But Palatka, St. John's River, first tournament of the Bassmaster season this year. You know, I felt good about it. I wanted, you know, to kind of not play it safe. I wanted to just try to win the tournament, just do everything I can to catch the biggest bag possible. And as I look back at the tournament and I say to myself, you know, what went wrong? I finished 56 in the tournament, so a little worse than half. Got a little check, which not great, but it's a small check. Some points, so it's not the end of the world. It could have been worse. But I only caught 4 fish the first day, and I caught 4 fish the second day. And that was just mind-boggling to me. Like, it was really, really, matter of fact, when I caught my first limit at Harris Chain, I was like, finally, a limit. 3 tournament days in, I finally got a limit. So it was crazy. So yeah, it felt good to finally get a limit at this last tournament, first day. But yeah, 2 days, days 1 and 2, St. John's, 4 fish each day, which was crazy. And the first day, so here's my plan on day 1. My plan on day 1 was to run down, start on a shell bar in the morning, and then run down to Astor to some pads that have done me wrong now twice. I will never go back ever in the history of me going to the St. John's will ever go back to those pads again. I will not ever practice them ever again. I don't ever want to get a bite on that stretch of pads in my life again. So that's done. That was my little rant. I had to get that off my chest because 2 years in a row, those pads have done me dirty. That being said, I ran down there. That didn't happen. Then all of a sudden it's like 11 o'clock or something. I don't even have a fish. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, okay, what am I gonna do now? So then I dipped in the springs, and I didn't want to sight fish that tournament at the springs because the fish weren't really up all that good, but there was a few in there. So I said, okay, let me try to get a limit. So I caught 4 pretty quick, you know, bam, 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 all of a sudden I'm at 4. So I had 4 or 5 hours to finish off my limit. And then that's when things got a little strange. It's just like, you know, next thing you know, an hour went by and I'm like, okay, I haven't found another one. And then another hour went by and I'm like, okay, didn't find another catchable fish. And then it was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? So then I said, well, I'll run back up the lake and finish off my limit throwing a swim jig and a spinnerbait. And that didn't, like, it was just like 0 bites the rest of the day. And like 4 hours of fishing, nothing. So that hurt. So then on day 2, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm not gonna do that again. I'm gonna go to Rodman. I'd found some fish in Rodman, some spawning fish on those flats around the lily pads. And I thought, you know, I can go there and I can get a limit. And then from there, I can just go do some other things. So I locked into Rodman, which is obviously what I should have done on day 1. I locked into Rodman and I went flipping right off the bat. And so I did a little deviation. That was one of those little last minute, spur of the moment decisions that paid off. And in bass fishing, you have to be ready to make those little micro adjustments. And it paid off. Matter of fact, take a look. This is one of my first flips on Rodman on day 2 of the tournament. I didn't even plan on flipping. Check this out. Okay, that was a good one right there. I mean, that was like a 6-pounder right off the bat. I felt good about it. And then all I had to do was run over there to the pads and finish up my limit. And there weren't giant ones in those pads, but there were like 3-pounders and some 4-pounders. So I thought, you know, I probably could get 16, 17, 18 pounds. Now I've got a 6-pounder on top of it. This could be a good day. Well, I ended up losing the very first bite that I had over there. It was like a 3-pounder, and then I ended up getting up to 4 fish again. So now it's like 10:30 in the morning, and I've got a decision to make. Do I stay in Rodman and try to finish out my limit? Or do I run back down the lake and throw a swim jig and a spinnerbait and stuff in the main river pads, which is how Canterbury was catching them and some of the other buddies of mine were catching them too. You're getting, and I caught them in practice that way, getting some quality bites. I mean, those fish ranged anywhere from really 3 to 5 pounds on average. So I thought, okay, I'll have 4 or 5 hours to just upgrade a little bit. So I decided to lock back out of Rodman. I locked out of Rodman at 10:30, was back on the river by like 11:30. And from 11:30 till 3 when I had to come in, zero bites. It was just like, what? It was just crazy. So, you know, the 2020 takeaway from me on this, it isn't as much as it is like, here's what I did wrong. Because I felt like those were good decisions, but it's like, on the St. Johns River, you have tide that you have to contend with. Water temperature changes throughout the system, depending if you're far south or north. There's a 5 or 6 degree water temperature change. And wind can dictate all that, moon phase. So there's a lot of variables in the St. Johns, is what I've realized over the last couple of years now, that you have to take into account. You have to. Matter of fact, John Cruz won the tournament. He blew it out. And that was an impressive win. In my opinion, John Cruz, that win on the St. Johns was one of the more impressive wins in the history of bass fishing. Honestly. Look, many people have won a tournament, myself included, where you get on a good area, you get on a good little pattern, and you run with it for 3 or 4 days and you win the tournament. But what John did was he fished the conditions every day. He fished different places. He was out deep on finesse fish. He was up shallow in pads. He was on the main river flipping, throwing chatterbaits. It didn't matter. Every day it seemed like he was doing something a little different because he understood the tides. He understood what phase the fish were in those certain areas, and those were all very complicated things to figure out. And so again, my hat's off to John Cruz on this one. In my opinion, that ranks up there. That win ranks up there in the top for wins because of the complexity of the whole thing, right? So again, hats off to John on winning that thing. I mean, he just jacked them up every single day. But those are the things, you know, that I need to understand better at the St. Johns. It's not as simple as just saying, oh, the fish are going to spawn, and the fish aren't spawning, the fish are on the main river, because there's like bite windows. We noticed in practice that like at 9 o'clock to 9 to like noon in practice, and it kind of changed every day, was kind of a bite window. And that was really based on the tide. Even though there's not a lot of physical tide there, there's still an influence of the tide. Like there's still movement of water and less movement of water at certain times, and those, it just made the fish bite different because it put the bait in different places. And I didn't understand that. And even Canterbury, you know, even like the last day of the tournament that he fished, he caught all of his fish in the last hour because that bite window changed about an hour every day. So in practice, it was like 9 to 12. And then, you know, by the time the tournament rolled, it was like 11 to 1. And then, you know, by the time the tournament was over, it was like the bite window was all the way up to like the last hour of the day. And so that being said, that's what I'm going to figure out next time. Or just go to Robin and keep it simple. That's the other option, you know, and I'm going to either do one or the other, but I'm not going to do both anymore. It's too distracting. You got to either just try to understand the tides and roll with it, or just go to Rodman and figure out the bite there, because that's a stable fishery there. Like the water doesn't fluctuate. You know, it's a lake. So, you know, that's my takeaway on it. And I encourage any of y'all that live on a fishery similar to that to understand the tides. If you want to catch more fish and be more consistent and win tournaments, you got to understand the tide and understand those bite windows and what certain areas or where you live mean to what the tide is. You know, it's always changing, an hour every day. So there's going to be cycles throughout each month where things don't line up quite right, but then there's times that it does. And I've won the Potomac River. And when I won Potomac River, I understood the tides really well that week. I had them written down depending on where I was on the river and what the tide would be and the difference of tide 20 miles up the river, and I could kind of go fish that bite window accordingly up and down the river. So if we go back to the St. Johns for another Bassmaster, those are the things I'm going to try to figure out, dial in a little bit better. But you know, 56th place, it's better than 96th place, that's for sure. And Harris Chain was good. Bassmasters Classic is next. And I just want to thank you guys. I know this isn't a real elaborate 2020, but I just wanted to kind of break down that whole event for you. And we're going to be doing a 2020 for Harris Chain, and that one's going to be a good one because there's some interesting stuff in that one there. So guys, thanks for hanging out. Love you very much, and we will see you soon. Bye.